Hello again, dear colleagues. My name is Uliana Kochetkova, and I have the honor to represent the Department of Phonetics of St. Petersburg State University. And I would like to thank the workshop organizer, the conference organizers for the wonderful opportunity to present our work. And let me start by emphasizing that our approach is linguistic and notably phonetic. So we will talk about in analysis through synthesis based on a detailed acoustic analysis. So what is the resynthesis or modifications? What is this method? Audio signal modification or resynthesis is an artificial change of the acoustic features of the original speech signal in order to reproduce the characteristics of another target signal as closely as possible. So that's what we could see at this slide. This method of experimental research allows to determine the influence of the value of each acoustic parameter and its contribution to achieving the maximum perceptual similarity of the modified source signal with the target one. Therefore, this method becomes a very subtle instrument that helps identify the role of different parameters within the complex acoustic characteristics of a concrete meaning, emotion, or modality. One of such modalities, not sentiment, not emotions, but modalities, which stays a challenging point for the dialogue systems using artificial intelligence technologies in different languages, is irony, notably ironic negation or antiphrasis. In the one of the first keynote talks, we have already heard about it, but there the analysis of text was presented. So this phenomenon, the phenomenon of irony, negation, consists in negating the direct word meaning, but intonation or paralinguistic means. Its correct interpretation and production is very important for conversational agents because of its pragmatic role. If the utterance with antiphrasis or irony negation is understood in its direct sense, it can mislead or disturb the communication process. And that is why nowadays this topic attracts such a high attention of the researchers. Here we should mention that the most of the works, as I have already said, are dealing with text, and it facilitates the irony treatment. However, as soon as we move to the oral speech, this task becomes very complicated. Why? Because very often we have no context or remark, but only the phonetic properties that give us the information about how we should treat such an utterance. For instance, during the phone call, a cue may be given, конечно, sure, but with different meaning. Конечно, when we agree, or конечно, when this is a disagree. But how you can know whether there is a literal meaning or not, only basing on how it sounds. So let me give you some examples. You can just listen to it. Can you hear it? Oh, sorry.
Друг.
Yeah, if you can hear, it's quite neutral. Yeah, and another example.
Друг.
Here you can see that the person doesn't consider someone as a friend. Yeah. So the next one.
Будет она нам помогать?
Will she help us? Yeah.
Будет она нам помогать?
Yeah, just a question, a very neutral yes or no question.
Будет она нам помогать?
Now, there is no, this is not a question. This is a sentence, a declarative sentence with an ironic meaning. So another example.
Он объяснит.
Who will explain? Yeah, quite neutral sentence.
Он объяснит.
And another one.
Он объяснит.
Yeah. So here also we can hear the doubt or the irony or the negation of this fact that he will explain something. So These examples I will try to understand how we dealt with this subject, with irony features in this speech. In our study, as I have already said, we are interested in modification of intonation characteristics. And since our material consists of stimuli which represent identical sequences of sounds, which differ only by their connotation, neutral or ironic, read by the same speaker, we have the opportunity to fully use the technique of resynthesis. Alternative changing prosodic characteristics will determine to what extent each of the studied parameters affects the achievement of perceptual similarity of the initially neutral utterance with the ironic and vice versa. But to study, the first step, to study the phonetic properties of irony, we built a special multimedia corpus of ironic speech. We composed 4 coherent texts and 5 sets of short text or dialects, including ironic and non-ironic context for each of the target fragments, and it gave us about 62 short text or dialects in each of the sets. And all the sentence types were represented in this short text. So the examples are given on the right.
Какой твой любимый персонаж детских сказок? Русалочка.
It's quite natural. What is your favorite character in children's fairy tales? The Little Mermaid. And the next example.
Чуть не утонула. Русалочка. Ты зачем туда поплыла?
Here you can hear the irony. Actually, you are almost drowned, the Little Mermaid. Why did you go there? And so I continue talking about our corpus. The audio recording was made in a soundproof cabin at the Department of Phonetics at St. Petersburg University. Video recording was done simultaneously on Sony camera in a high resolution, a high speed mode. One session took about 40 minutes, not more, because the speaker could be tired psychologically, and the voice could be tired after that time. 60 speakers took part at the recording, and it resulted in the total of more than 15,000 stimuli. The audio snippets with the homonymous ironic and non-ironic utterances with no semantic or lexical marker were extracted then from the recordings in order to validate the material that we have obtained. And these snippets were presented in a randomized order to the native listeners during a series of auditory perceptual experiments. The participants were asked to associate the snippets they heard with ironic or non-ironic reading contexts. You can see the examples of such questions of the survey. Well, thank you, my friend. Now I have to solve all the problem myself. Ну, спасибо, удружил. Or the second one, ну, спасибо, and this is a real gratitude. Ты реально выручил, без тебя я бы не уложился в срок. The experiments were conducted using the SourceEye survey platform. Then we accomplished an acoustic analysis, and we analyzed temporal, dynamic, and melodic features of the well-recognized snippets. The analysis was done mainly using prod software, and the calculation of pitch was done automatically via the wave-assisted program, followed by manual adjustment, both in hertz and semitones. Melodic patterns were obtained through the program prod software as well. The most salient feature was the stressed vowel duration of the informational focus of the phrase. In most of the cases, it was lengthened in more than 80% of the stimuli. So here you can see the examples. He will explain on the left side, and neutral stimulus is given on the left in each of the illustrations, and ironic one is given on the right. So you can see here that the vowel, the stressed vowel is lengthened in both cases, but there are just 2 examples, but there are many. So the intensity level of the phrase was the second salient features, and it appeared in 73% of the phrases that were recognized as ironic. Here you can see at the On the left, the example of the stimulus right now, neutral and ironic, and you can see the amplitude, which is augmented on the right side, in the right side example. But sometimes another kind of change appeared. It was diminished. It was pronounced not that loud that the neutral phrase. It was also possible. But when we consider duration, only the augmentation was presented, and it almost never stayed the same. When we considered intensity level, we saw two different movements. So one movement in the most of cases was the augmentation, but another part, about 20–25%, it was the diminishing, as we see here. So the next one of the features which were salient was the melodic range change and the change of the melodic pattern, of the whole melodic pattern. Here we can see a quite huge interval of the last syllable of the word сейчас. Right now, and on the right we can see another change which was less frequent, the diminution of that. So the very interesting result of our acoustic analysis was not only the description of one kind of change, but we saw different changes. It meant two different changes, like hyperbole and retort, augmentation or diminishing. Then the last one actually, the last salient feature was the spectral density. Yeah, I think I stopped here, the spectral density. And right, now we tried to verify, to check out the value of each of the parameters except the spectral density, because there is no reliable method of resynthesis of the voice quality of this spectral density. So only these three parameters were checked out. Well, a set of reliably identified homonymous, ironic, and neutral stimuli was obtained, and for this series of experiments, the threshold of the correct evaluation was 85% of correct interpretation by the participants of perceptual experiments. It gave 28 pairs of stimuli and 13 pairs of the well-recognized homonymous, ironic, and neutral stimuli in male speech, and 15 pairs in female speech. Then the experiments, there were two kinds of experiments. With the source neutral stimuli and source ironic stimuli. The first series of experiments was based on the imposition of acoustic characteristics of ironic target phrases, their combinations on homonymous non-ironic stimuli. In the second series, the same experiments were carried out, but the characteristics of non-ironic statements were superimposed on ironic ones. Well, the pilot experiment with modification of the melodic pattern at the previous stage of our work showed that the change of only one parameter, it was not sufficient. Thus, we decided to make various separate and complex modifications. In each of experiments, 7 types of modifications were carried out: a change in the duration of the stressed vowel, a change in the intensity of the stressed vowel, a modification of the contour of the main tone of the target stimulus, a combination of changes in the duration and intensity, combination of changes in the duration of the stressed vowel and the melodic pattern, and combination of change in melodic pattern of the target phrase and the intensity of the stressed vowel, and finally the combination of all the 3 parameters. So modification of the acoustic feature of duration was performed using the wave assistant sound processing program. First, segmentation of the stressed vowel in ironic and paired non-ironic stimuli was carried out manually. Then the labels of the periods of the fundamental frequency were placed and corrected. The duration of the stressed vowel was modified by adding or reducing the required number of periods of the fundamental frequency, so that the resulting vowel corresponded in duration to the stressed vowel of the paired context. This was done in order to avoid clicks when adding or subtracting periods of the fundamental frequency. Then we made changes in intensity, excuse me. These changes were a little bit simpler. Also, we used the wave assistant program and we used the linear processing function, which allows us to change the amplitude of the sound by multiplying it by a constant. For each fragment, this number was selected individually so that when multiplying the amplitude by this constant, the stressed vowel had the same intensity as the stressed vowel from the paired context. The figure, the illustration on the left, gives you the idea of the process of changing the intensity of the stressed vowel of the ironic stimulus, and this is the end, это конец. Yes. The change in intensity is proportional to the change in the amplitude of the stressed vowel, as you can see. Then we made the melodic pattern resynthesis. The tags of the main frequency of the target phrases were marked manually in the wave assistant program. The markup was then exported by prod, and after that, the resulting contour was manually superimposed on the corresponding segment at the key points of the local minimum and local maximum of the pitch frequency using the prod script, using the overlap add method, notably. This procedure allows us to change the melodic design of the utterance while maintaining the original dynamic and temporal characteristics. And we did various combinations of the modifications, as I have already said. And then we presented the obtained stimuli to the listeners during the auditory perceptual experiments. And here you can see the illustration of such an experiment, one page of it. And they have two options, one context with ironic meaning, another context with non-ironic meaning, and the third option was, I'm not sure. So the results of these experiments showed a very interesting thing. When we compared it to the acoustic analysis, the results of the acoustic analysis showed that the duration of the stressed vowel was the most significant and most salient feature, statistically proved feature. But when we made modifications, we saw that duration was not sufficient, first of all, and duration, the modification of duration alone didn't give a good result. So here we can see that when we change the neutral phrases to the ironic ones, so source stimuli were neutral stimuli, and neutral stimuli were the source stimuli, and ironic stimuli were the target stimuli. The duration and melodic pattern became one of the most important features, combinated features, complex features. And the next one was the most complex feature, duration and intensity and melodic pattern change. Then we can see that intensity with melodic pattern gave a quite good result, more than 50%. But in all these three groups, in all these three combinations, we can see the melodic pattern. So the melodic pattern alone was not sufficient in our pilot experiment to give a good result. But here, we can see that it plays a very important role, and even given alone in this material, it gave 57% of good recognition. The combination of duration and intensity didn't give a good result. It was 32%, and duration alone, intensity alone give even worse results. So the next series of experiments was made with source ironic stimuli and with target neutral stimuli. What we can see here, the most complex combination, the most complex feature was the most the best recognized. We can see 70%, even a little bit more, of listeners recognized correctly these modified stimuli. The duration with melodic pattern gave a quite good result, as well as melodic pattern alone. Intensity with melodic pattern was recognized by more than 50% of listeners, but not that well that they listed before, the characteristics listed before. The worst results were given by intensity modification or duration modification, or by their combination, as you can see here. One thing that we could observe during these experiments was a very interesting result. We could wait for it, actually. It was the change of the voice quality when we took the source ironic stimuli and changed them to the non-ironic neutral stimuli. We couldn't do anything with the spectral density, as I have already said before, and that was they sounded sometimes very intensively, or sometimes with nasalization. And the nasalization effect was a new effect. It was not there. It was not in the source stimuli. That was one of the challenges, but at this moment we can't do anything with it. So what can we say? The results of the transfer of the acoustic characteristics from non-ironic fragments to ironic ones support the conclusions that the most important acoustic parameter responsible for the ironic meaning perception is the melodic pattern, including combinations of changes in the intonation content with other acoustic characteristics. And simultaneous changes in duration, intensity, and intonation content or pattern have the greatest impact on the perception of a phrase as ironic or non-ironic. Anyway, we can say that this is a stable characteristics, very reliable feature. Temporal and dynamic characteristics were the least important when given alone, and changing these parameters individually or in combination with each other doesn't significantly affect the interpretation of ironic or non-ironic passages. So what I would like to say at the end, that these modifications changed our vision of the importance of the relevance of the different parameters that we obtained during acoustic analysis. And that the most interesting conclusion that we can do at the end of our research. Thank you to the resynthesis and modification procedures. Thank you very much for the attention. I think that's all I can say.
Thank you, Uliana. Do we have any questions from the audience? Seems to be, yeah.
So thank you for the talk. I have a very short question just because we are running out of time. So yeah, the research is like really nice and I appreciate the design. And the question is a little bit speculative. Imagine we have a talk with phones with very natural conditions when a person is in transport or something. I believe that the features you have mentioned, at least duration and intensity, could be very different from speech which was recorded in a studio. So how do you think may real-world conditions affect on how people sounded and make them, like, make these features be more similar to ironic features you have discovered?
Thank you very much for the question. Actually, what we know about the speech in the noise surrounding, we know that to make something louder, we do not make it louder, we make it higher very often. That the first thing that we do. And of course, it will be changed. But if we try to find some coefficients and proportions of features in ironic and non-ironic stimuli. That's what we did, because we compared two exactly similar stimuli pronounced by the same speaker. And so what we tried to analyze when we did the acoustic analysis, we tried to find this, let's say, coefficient that we should apply to get the ironic phrase from the non-ironic one. And this procedure and the procedure that we did during modifications could maybe help to analyze which proportions should be in the speech during the phone call, in the transport, or in the train, or in a bus, you know, because the other utterances, the normal utterances, the neutral utterances, will be also pronounced in a more intensive way or higher, and then the ironic phrases will be even higher, maybe, yeah, and maybe louder, or with the duration used as the most selling feature in this case, because the duration, that's something that we will hear better than the changes in the intensity when there is a lot of noise, you know. So that's just a hypothesis, but that's what I think about it.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Actually, I had a question, but okay.
Please go. It's I think we have some time spare.
Yeah. My talk will be a bit shorter, so I want to ask Uliana about your talk. It's a maybe naive question, but it's about ironic features, but how maybe you relate to sarcastic context, or is it actually manifested somehow in that level that you discussed? Is there some relation between irony and sarcasm?
And sarcasm.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you very much for the question. It's a good question. Actually, there is a difference of terms, or there is a difference of things. For you, do you mean by sarcasm something else than irony, right?
Yeah, maybe that's hidden, not that obvious. I mean, it's just a general common.
A kind of joke. You mean a kind of joke of humor, right?
Yeah.
It's a more, it's a larger thing that irony that we understood, because we decided to check out and to analyze only one concrete type of irony or sarcasm. You can use these terms as synonyms because some of the European authors who study irony, they use the term sarcasm in this sense. Some of them make difference, so it depends on the vision of this terminology. But if we are talking about jokes, you know, something which is not, which doesn't change the word meaning. It can be humor, it can be kind of sarcasm or irony, but it doesn't change the word meaning. It's another thing. It's also very interesting, but it's a little bit complicated to find it and to, well, you can find it, but to determine the limits of the phenomenon that you then investigate. But when you take only irony as negation, antiphrasis, it becomes very simple, I can say, to understand where it is there or not. Because you can see the semantic analysis. If you analyze the corpus, which was not made specially for that, but I don't know, radio news, you know, radio news or TV news, or some programs, and you want to find something, then you can have a context, right? And you can see that in this context, you have this phrase, and this phrase was ironic. It should be ironic, and then you start to analyze how it was pronounced. But in our case, it was a different thing, because different circumstances, because we did it in a special way. We constructed this corpus in a way to obtain ironic meaning. So
No.
I gave these examples. For example, if I say, оставила записку «помой посуду» и ушла. Как мило, как здорово. Oh, how nice. You understand well when you have to read how nice when you are a speaker. You understand very well that it's not very nice, actually, if you have to wash the dishes, but when you have another context that you read, and it's written, he made a gift for me. Oh, how nice. It's a gift, some flowers, I don't know. How nice. You understand that it's really nice. So then that's the literal sense of the word nice. But when you pronounce, she left some dishes to wash, how nice. So it was not very nice. And you understand that this is not the real literal sense. So you made it ironic as a speaker, and in your everyday life, you make the same. So that's what we did when we constructed this corpus. And it was our goal to do that. I'm sorry for talking for taking so long. Make it. We analyzed before a huge number of films, series, fiction, and different kinds of texts. Audio and visual texts. And then we saw in which syntactic constructions the irony is. Has the best presentation, and the speaker can present it well, and it's quite logical, it's obvious, That's it.
So it was the target of the study, I see.
Yeah, it was the target of the first stage of the study when we constructed the corpus.
Yeah, okay. Thank you
very much. Thank you.